Against the backdrop of the impending advent of the Trump 2.0 era, everything seems to have quietly changed given Trump's claim that he would end the war within 24 hours. The arrival of Trump 2.0 once made those who yearn for peace feel hopeful, thinking that it might be the dawn of the end of the war. However, the rapidly changing situation has cast a shadow over people's hearts judging from the current situation. The game among all parties regarding Ukraine is far from over. On the contrary, it seems to have just entered a new stage. Ukraine remains at the center of the vortex of the game among various countries. Like a chessboard that has taken turns to be attended to by all sides to demonstrate their respective positions, there is less than 2 months left before Trump officially takes office. During this transition period, what Ukraine needs to consider is not blindly following anyone's instructions, but clearly recognizing the numerous pressures it faces. How can Ukraine clearly understand the situation it is in? The launch of the hypersonic ballistic medium-range missile Zircon by Russia to attack the Uzhmash plant in Ukraine on November 21 is a good point for observation. Although the Uzhmash plant has a strong military nature. For example, the United States once planned to assemble short-range and medium-range ballistic missiles there, and the Ukrainian military had previously modernized the S-200 air defense system. However, this is undoubtedly a military operation with greater political significance than practical results. The actual strike effect of the Zircon was not significant. The important significance lies in the fact that it was the first time that a hypersonic ballistic missile was used in a military operation in human history after the attack. The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine cancelled the plenary session originally scheduled for November 22. In contrast to the obviously intimidated performance of the Ukrainian authorities, the reaction of the United States was much tougher. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said after the event that neither in the United States nor in Ukraine would the Zircon scare or intimidate anyone, and that the United States would continue to fight for Ukraine's democracy. Such remarks have caused quite a stir within the United States. Some well-known American politicians and business people, including Republican politicians, reacted strongly to such remarks and criticized that the tough stance of the Democratic administration was dragging the United States into a nuclear war. The degree of division between the two major parties in the United States on this issue has reached a point that cannot be ignored. The split between the two parties is a manifestation of the political rift in American society on this issue. And this rift has even plunged the entire Western world into an uncertainty quagmire regarding the issue of Ukraine. This is reflected in Biden's decision-making process. Biden's loosening decision was not made directly, but was finalized after considerable hesitation. Before the Zircon incident, a meeting was held between Trump and Biden, during which the two presidents discussed the matter of the power transition from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. In response to this, American public opinion has offered two completely different interpretations. The first interpretation claims that Biden and Trump reached a gentleman's agreement on the issue of Ukraine. The content of the agreement was that in the remaining days before January 20, 2025, the inauguration of the new president, Biden deliberately raised the risk of an escalation of the situation in Ukraine as much as possible in order to allow Trump, after taking office, to start all over again and become a peacemaker. The main tone of this view is that everything Biden is doing currently is to pave the way for highlighting Trump. The second interpretation also acknowledges the claim that there was a secret agreement between Biden and Trump. But the argument is completely the opposite. Biden persuaded Trump to acquiesce in the escalation of tensions in Ukraine and other parts of the world and to continue implementing the previous adventurous policies of the Democratic Party. Both of these arguments are the traditional tactics of the American political circle to confuse the public, with the aim of covering up the real situation behind their decision-making. However, upon careful consideration, it is not difficult to find that behind the two deliberately released claims lies the current C280I, on where the American political circle has difficulty reaching a consensus on the situation in Ukraine. This rift already existed even before Russia launched the attack and is now manifested in the form of a split between the two parties. Unlike these two claims, most people tend to believe that the Biden team is determined to undermine the governing foundation of Trump and his team. An anonymous source told Reuters that Biden's decisions are related to Trump's election because Trump is deeply skeptical of the U.S. decision to support Ukraine. In fact, after Biden allowed Ukraine to fire ATACMS and the British and French Storm Shadow missiles into the deep regions of Russia, the West has already reached a dead end, on the premise that Russia will definitely respond, and in fact, it has indeed responded. The West either continues to share more advanced long-range weapons or even nuclear weapons with Ukraine, or helps the Ukrainian authorities acquire their own nuclear weapons, not necessarily real nuclear weapons, but also possible pseudo-nuclear weapons such as dirty bombs. At that time, Pandora's box will be opened. However, if this is not done, the West does not know how to prevent the prospect of Russia is winning from becoming a reality. Therefore, Biden's decision was made under the premise that he himself did not even know how to deal with the aftermath. The mentality of taking one step and looking at the next has secretly driven Biden's loosening decision. The two interpretations of the meeting between Biden and Trump released by American think tanks are both ATT and PTS by the Biden administration to test the outside world's reaction and to save face for its own decisions. Once such adventurous decisions are made, it is very difficult to end them. Responding with toughness to tougher actions is the only way for adventurous decisions. The fundamental reason why Western politicians make adventurous decisions lies in the fact that the Western political circle, especially in Europe, specifically naming the UK, is now full of politicians who have risen to power through nepotism. These people are arrogant and lack a sense of awe due to their career backgrounds, and they keep hinting to themselves, Putin is bluffing with nuclear deterrence. But in fact he would never dare to do so. These arrogant Western politicians believe that Russia would never dare to really respond. Tough lie. Because 1. For the Kremlin and Putin, Ukrainians are a fraternal people that need to be protected, because we have to live with them. So Russia will be hesitant to act too. Russia is worried that a nuclear escalation will anger the global south and thus be isolated. However, Putin's response caught them off guard. Although Putin explained that the Zircon is a ballistic missile without a nuclear warhead, people with a rational mind understand that it would be a piece of cake to attach a nuclear warhead to this missile. The reactions of the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine and U.S. officials after the event also prove that at least the U.S. side did not expect Russia to respond with an intercontinental missile. They might have thought that Russia's response would be like before, just conventional bombing. They have voluntarily pushed themselves into what is called strategic uncertainty. In short, they themselves don't know how to handle what they have created. This is why the democratic government has to feign toughness afterwards. But in fact, its toughness cannot withstand scrutiny a few days after the attack. The West is either feigning toughness to save face, such as the UK still clamoring to continue providing Ukraine with more and more advanced missiles, or being unusually low-key. Even the Lithuanian president Gitanas Nausėda, who is known for his grandiose and unrealistic remarks, did not express his position immediately. American think tanks and the media have attracted a lot of attention in this incident, but top American politicians have remained silent, especially Trump, whose silence is rather unsettling. Many people expected Trump to speak out loudly about the current situation, or at least share his views, but he didn't do so. Perhaps even he himself hasn't figured out how to express himself in a proper, rational way that doesn't conflict with his own ideas. His preference for risking the image of being a peacemaker over making hasty remarks shows the complexity of the current situation and the confused state within Western politics. In the current situation, the only certainty is strategic uncertainty. In the face of provocation, Putin directly said, "Enough. Stop fooling around." While the West is still mired in uncertainty and has embarked on the dead end of feigning toughness in exchange for even tougher responses as for Ukraine, the first question we need to be concerned about is, in the context of the West instigating trouble and itself being deeply trapped in strategic uncertainty, does Ukraine have sufficient self-preservation capabilities to face the pressure from this uncertainty and maintain the basic operation of the country, against the background that Ukraine has almost lost all its self-sustaining capabilities? This uncertainty pressure from its Western allies is tantamount to pushing Ukraine towards death, forcing Ukraine to consider the issue of survival amid great uncertainty. Western media has recently been actively hyping up a new topic: Trump will end the war soon. But for this, Ukraine needs to make compromises. Ironically, this hype has actually become a sign of the public exposure of the rift in Ukrainian social cognition. We should first recognize that the connection between Ukrainian public opinion and Ukrainian policies is very weak, or even negligible. And this extremely weak connection does not have decisive significance for the Ukrainian authorities. The top priority is that the mobilization work cannot be completed as expected. Zelensky recently said that after the relevant mobilization laws were passed, 500,000 people still have not been mobilized. I haven't figured out yet whether he intends to use these remarks to stabilize the public's emotions or is simply complaining that the people are not sensible. The prospect of Trump 2.0 has had a profound impact on the public sentiment in Ukraine. The situation of the real public sentiment in Ukraine is numerous and complex and difficult to quantify. We can only observe it through the comparison of some social surveys. The social group rating serving the office of the President of Ukraine recently released the data of a survey commissioned by the International Republican Institute. 88% of Ukrainians are confident in the certain victory to come. 64% believe that the war will end within a year, at most 2 years. And 73% believe that all occupied territories need to be returned. The general view in the Ukrainian public opinion is that the Ukrainian authorities conducted this survey if there was indeed one to show off to Trump, indicating to him that what Ukraine needs is not peace but shells. The only puzzling thing is that 54% of the respondents in the survey support ending the war in the form of a referendum, which somewhat contradicts the result that 88% of the respondents are certain of inevitable victory. The results of a poll by the KYIV International Institute of Sociology (KIIS) show that 32% of the respondents are in favor of trading territory for peace in the rating survey results. This figure is 23%. If the territorial concession is further limited to Crimea or the Donbas region, the proportion of respondents in favor of territory for peace can reach 39%. This figure was even obtained under the condition that the sample was obviously biased. In reality, there will only be more people who support territory for peace, according to KIIS data, compared with May 2022. The number of people who agree to territory for peace has more than tripled, and the trend of public opinion is obvious recently. Some rumors circulating in the frontline areas are also very illustrative. For example, Poltava Oblast. The Russian army has secretly deployed a large number of long-range artillery pieces, preparing for a large-scale artillery bombardment of Poltava to force the Ukrainian army to retreat. There is no information about the movement of Russian artillery from all sources. Logically, the movement of such heavy equipment as artillery cannot be silent. In addition, this rumor emerged only after Trump's election was confirmed. There were no such rumors among the Ukrainian people before, but now they are becoming more and more numerous. especially after Trump's election. Many new rumors that had never been heard before have emerged. Most of these rumors are spread by those sources such as military representatives and officials. Perhaps this is a targeted intimidation campaign planned by the authorities to accelerate mobilization. But generally speaking, such rumors are more likely to dampen the morale of the people. Therefore, a more logical assumption is that such rumors are the product of a society with already low morale, and the efforts made by the Ukrainian authorities and their allies to boost the society indirectly indicate the extent of the low morale. For example, the British Sunday Times wrote when referring to the Ukraine reconstruction plan that the goal of this plan is to boost the morale of Ukrainians who have been hit by Trump's victory in the election. I don't think such a plan can cheer people up, especially under the premise that Zelensky is still tirelessly promoting his victory plan. Some aspects of the rehabilitation plan give the impression that it is aimed at inspiring Ukrainians to participate in the war. But the new mobilization methods it proposes may instead greatly reduce the mobilization effect. This plan proposes to provide numerous benefits to Ukrainians who join the army, provided that you survive first. Therefore, the eagerness of the Ukrainian authorities to demand that the US and the West loosen the restrictions on the use of long-range weapons in aid may not be to solve military problems, but to continue the war by actively escalating the situation and boost the morale of Ukrainians in the context of the menacing arrival of Trump 2.0 and the lack of war within Ukrainian society. Based on all these facts, I can assume that the morale of the Ukrainian society has now declined to the point where it is acceptable to accept negotiations and territory for peace. In addition, Ukraine's stance is not determined by the majority, but by the Ukrainian authorities and a small number of radicals. The former is afraid of losing power and being responsible for the outcome of the war, while the latter supports the war until it ends in victory. Most people will not oppose these minority elites, even if the social morale has declined to a certain extent. But there is no doubt that the differences between the society and the minority elites will further tear apart the Ukrainian society, especially since Trump 2.0 has given many people hope for the end of the war. Such differences will only increase in the future and will not decrease.